Hello, everyone, and welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are tuning in from. We are so happy that you're here with us today. We know that time is precious and everyone is so busy this time of year. We are really excited to discuss with you today 3 ways that social listening can really transform your business. You're probably wondering whose voice you're hearing. So, hello, I am Brooke Rohde. I am the product marketing manager here at Reputation, and I oversee our social listening products, our social experience products, which include social listening, as well as our social suite and our inbox and messaging tool. I am joined here today with Timmy Chu. She is the product manager that oversees those products, plus a few more. She kind of does all the things. And we are so happy we have her time here today as well to discuss a little bit more about social listening, how we define it here at Reputation, and how it can really work for you and your business. So to get into it, Oracle released this stat that 91% of people believe that companies should fuel innovation by listening to their customers. But the gap that we're seeing is that only 32% of marketing and customer experience professionals have access to that information that's needed. Don't worry, we're here. We got you. Today, we're going to really get into an overview of Reputation and so how we define social listening here. We then have 3 use cases and live demos. So we're going to get into brand perception, how to monitor your brand across all your social channels. Then we'll jump into the platform. Timmy will take us through exactly what that looks like, using one of our clients as an example. Then we'll get into using our second use case is using deep analytics to improve customer experience, content, and crisis management. And then our third use case is really leveraging competitive dashboards to help you win new customers. Then we'll get into next steps and closing out. So that being said, I want to start with this poll. I really want to gauge the audience here. I really want to understand how familiar are you with social listening? I know we have a lot of industries here, a lot of different job titles. The poll will stay up for about a minute, so please answer that on the side. It'll kind of guide our content for you today. And while you're answering that, I'm going to kick it over to Timmy to give you an overview of Reputation social listening.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Brooke. So Reputation has been around for many years now. And what Reputation specializes in is on the next slide, which is our RXM overview. So RXM is a term that we have pioneered, and it stands for Reputation Experience Management. And it's at the intersection of 3 different areas of experience management. So let me talk you through what exactly that means and how working with Reputation can enable you to manage all of your customer touch points along the entire customer journey. Think about, maybe tomorrow night, you're sitting on your couch and you decide that you maybe want to buy a new car. Why not? And so one of the ways that Reputation helps businesses be found is through our digital experience products. So this is where if you are looking for a dealership near me or near yourself, you might type that into a Google search, and that will pull up all of the dealerships near where you live. So some of the examples that might come up are Apple Automotive or Gregory Mitsubishi, who I believe might be on this call today. So some of the available actions that you can take from there are tapping on the call button or visiting the website of these dealerships. And maybe at that point, you decide that you want to go with Apple Automotive, right? And at that point, that's when you are taking a look through Apple's customer experience that they have provided to other customers, meaning the ratings and reviews that you might see on their Google My Business panel. You might want to understand how they have gotten back to other customers in the past, if they have exceptional service. And that's where our customer experience products can really help you. We can help you pinpoint specific areas to improve on so that you can provide a better customer experience or service. And we'll give you actionable insights on what particular strengths and weaknesses each of your businesses has. Meaning if Apple Automotive, if you are a dealer group that has, let's say 10 locations, we're able to identify which are your top performing locations and pinpoint those strengths. And finally, if you are, still on the couch, still digging through, trying to decide which dealership to go and patronize on that Saturday morning, one of the final areas that you might go to is their social page. And that's where our social experience products come into play. Social media is another opportunity for you to engage your audience and to really craft your brand. How can you engage the community that's out there that will probably become your customers and really create that authentic following? So those are some of the examples where reputation can lend a hand. And I think, Brooke, we probably have, yep, exactly. And so that's really not the only place, right, where folks will be talking about you. We covered social, Google, My Business, as well as on your ratings and reviews. What social listening can do is that it can help you monitor your brand reach and your brand sentiment all across the entire internet. Meaning, social listening is monitoring the web for mentions of your brand, competitors, products, and more, all across the entire web. What this means is that when it comes to social listening, it's not just on social, right? Which I know can be a little deceiving when you look at the term. The reason why it's called social listening is because this industry began just within the social realm. So just on Facebook and Twitter, if you will. But the reality is that people are talking about your brand even outside of just the social pages that you manage, right? Or that you own. They might be talking about you on a Reddit forum. There might be a YouTube video where folks are comparing your brand versus another brand that's common in the industry. There might be a blog article where an influencer is potentially talking about what a great experience they had with your brand. And those are some of the examples of the sources that social listening is able to monitor on your behalf. The basic way that it works is that you would work with the team in order to configure monitors, which we're going to talk through today. And these monitors contain specific keywords that are relevant to your brand, your industry, your competitors. You can even get as specific as particular languages that folks are talking about your brand or your company in, as well as specific geographies where those folks are talking about you. A great example of that is some of our customers only operate here in the US, but yet they have a big following overseas. And so that's a good opportunity for them to explore, why these folks are talking about them and if there's an opportunity for them to expand outside of the United States. It's not just about monitoring, though. There's also the importance of actually taking action on what is being said about you. And so now I'd like to go over some of the use cases that social listening can cover and who exactly this kind of tool can be helpful for. So overall, social listening can help you monitor your brand sentiment as well as understand your brand's reach. So some of the people that might find this tool helpful are one, in the brand experience space. So this can help you answer questions such as how your brand is perceived by your customers or by your prospects. How do customers typically talk about your brand? And what words do they typically use when they're thinking about your brand? Next is on the customer experience side. This is all about creating that joyful experience for your customers to come in and receive. So here we want to help you understand what is so great about your offering and what are some areas that you can potentially improve on. Next is crisis management. I think this is everyone's biggest nightmare, right? We get that accidents happen. Sometimes an employee might just say something that they meant as a joke, but was taken differently by the consumer. That split-second comment can really tear down your brand that you spent millions of dollars curating over years. And that's where social listening can help you control the damage in order to retain, the positive sentiment that you have built up for your brand. Next is competitive analysis. So I think we've talked through a couple of examples here where you would want to compare yourself to your competitors, understand how you're doing, as well as understand what your competitors are doing that you might want to follow suit on. A content strategist might find social listening helpful, where they might be looking for inspiration for their weekly social publishing posts, finding content that would resonate with the audience. Listening is a great way for you to identify what those topics are. And then finally is influencer marketing. So the best compliment is one that somebody else gives to you, particularly a customer gives to you. And so here we want to find people who have a broad reach, who could potentially speak or sponsor your brand and have their followers perceive your brand more positively. So that's a lot of use cases. So today we're going to be focusing on the three that Brooke has so nicely highlighted for me. So we're going to be talking about brand experience in the context of Scripps Health, in where they had a recent event that was not so pleasant for them to deal with, but we want to see how it was perceived by the public. Next is in crisis management. We're going to be looking at how Stryker, a medical device company, monitored how their customer sentiment changed over the course of a product recall. And then finally, we're going to be looking at a competitive analysis dashboard where Tesco, and if you guys are based in the UK, this is a retail brand, how they monitor themselves in comparison to other brands. And so with that, I'm first going to start by going over the brand monitoring use case. So brand perception is very important, where a marketer very commonly monitors how easily somebody is able to recall their brand, and their big goal is to increase the perception of that particular brand by the public. And so one way that we can measure that is by creating a brand monitoring dashboard. So I want to take you through the process of how I, a Scripps Health executive, might create a monitor within the reputation listening platform in order to understand how my brand is being perceived. So,
Awesome. While you go to pull that up, Timmy, I just wanted to acknowledge the poll that we launched in the beginning.
yes.
So it looks like we're kind of like skewed a little bit, but the majority of people, about 60%, that say that they've heard of social listening, but they really want to understand how it can help their role and in their company. So I just want to point out, you guys have a questions feature. We will be taking questions at the end. So as we're going through these use cases, if you have questions around how maybe this tool could work for your industry or with your specific job title in your day-to-day, please drop the questions there. We will address those at the end. And then I'll let Timmy get into our first use case of brand management.
Perfect. All right. So we're going to be taking a look at how a Scripps Health user would be able to configure a monitor that monitors their own brand. And so this is our monitor configuration screen. So you can see that I've already gone ahead and filled in some of the fields. So to remind you, the overall goal here is to come up with keywords that are widely used when discussing your brand, right? So I think, one of the words that's widely used is going to be Scripps. That's a pretty safe wager. And then some of these simple words, right? So here their name includes health. So I threw in health, healthcare, medicine. We can definitely spend all day here trying to think about different ways that people misspell health or healthcare or medicine. But that's some of the fine tuning that can happen over time. Some of the other fields that we might want to include are simple ones, such as Scripps' website. So I quickly found that it's scripps.org. There might be some other particular pages that they own, so I might want to throw those in here as well. Scripps also happens to have a Twitter profile at Scripps Health, so I threw that in here as well. So, as you can see, that was, maybe 5 minutes worth of work where I just went and dug up some of the most commonly used words. You can definitely get more sophisticated. So I mentioned that we would also be able to search by geographies, right? So one of the ways that I can narrow in the search even further is by identifying specific locations, right? So I happen to know that Scripps Health is only based in the San Diego area, so maybe I can find California within here, so that I can identify only the mentions from folks who are based in the area that Scripps Health is based in. Or I might even take this opportunity to just, keep the search as broad as I can. So maybe in Canada, right? So this might be an opportunity where Scripps Health can identify folks who might be interested in, in becoming a customer, but that are based outside of the U.S. So Canada's not too far. That's a pretty good area for them to expand into. So these are some of the fields that I would typically suggest somebody start out with. They're rather simple and typically give you a good pulse on what is being said about your brand. And I think, Brooke, there was a question that came in, right, about what kinds of mentions actually get pulled in from these monitors. And so thank you so much to whoever asked that question, because there are a lot of sources that get covered by the data that these monitors would pull in. So some of the examples are Twitter mentions, Facebook mentions, and Instagram mentions, right? Just to stick with that social theme. But there's also video mentions, image mentions, as well as other sources like RSS feeds, videos, blogs, and forums. So really the entire internet where somebody might be talking about your brand, we are able to go and monitor for that and pull in all of those mentions into a single dashboard. So, speaking of that dashboards, let's take a look at it, right? So as I mentioned, Scripps Health, they have about 400 physicians over in the San Diego area. So there's quite a bit of chatter that goes on about what all is happening, right? And so this is the monitor feed that is based on the specific monitor that I actually just showed you. So here, we can see that there's a lot of trends about pregnancy articles, some rounds of applause for teams who are continuing to support us throughout the pandemic, even despite all the supply chain shortages. And then there's a molecular biologist who I'm sure is doing some really amazing work down at Scripps. And so this is the type of discovery that someone who is on the content strategy side or on the brand management side might want to do. And so here, their primary objective is to respond to any questions or comments that might come in. So directly within here, right, I can actually go ahead and add a note. I can reply to this tweet, and I can maybe even congratulate Artem for the amazing work that he's doing. So all of that is available within this monitor feed. However, this is still very tactical, right? And so now I want to get into how a dashboard might look for Scripps. And I want to just quickly introduce a recent event that Scripps Health unfortunately encountered. So back in May of 2021, Scripps experienced a cyber attack. And that cyber attack took down all of their patient care systems, their website, their internal systems, even the ones where you call in and make an appointment. Everything was down. This really put Scripps Health in a tricky situation. They had patients who were looking to come in, and unfortunately, it did result in the loss of $90 million in revenue. And so what we wanted to do was identify how this cyber attack impacted Scripps Health's reputation. Scripps Health was fortunately able to utilize the reputation platform to communicate with their patients throughout the entire cyber attack. And so we wanted to see what the impact of that was. And so based on the monitor that we already looked at together, I put together a dashboard where we're able to see, what all has transpired over the course of the last, I think, 6 months here. And so already, when I start over here on the top left, this mentions volume. This helps me as a brand manager understand how often people are actually talking about my brand, right? And these spikes are a good indication that people are talking about me a lot. And so you'll notice that right around the May range, right, there was a big spike. That's definitely when the cyber attack occurred. And then I actually also noticed that recently there was a big spike over here. So we'll have to see what that's about, because it seems like people are suddenly, talking about Scripps, hopefully not another cyber attack. So I'm going to go down to this little bubble stream over here. And this bubble stream actually helps us understand the reach of each of these mentions that has occurred about Scripps Health over time. So this essentially helps us understand how impactful are these mentions on my brand that people are actually saying about me. So just clicking around a bit, right, I want to focus on really the big circles, because that's where if somebody is tweeting something about me, it could potentially have a wide reach. So it makes sense. LA Times, they probably have a large following. And so, they are retweeting an article that I think is in Spanish about the cyber attack. So that makes sense. That was back in May, right? And so, we definitely see that spike in volume there. So let's hop on over to one of these large circles. I just want to quickly see. Yes. Okay. So I think the Nobel Peace Prizes or Nobel Prizes were awarded a couple days ago, and it looks like we had some winners that were based in Scripps Health. So that's great, right? And it looks like the retweets that are associated with those particular Nobel Prize winnings were way larger than any of the cyber attack mentions. And so, that is a really great finding, right? Meaning people are no longer associating cyber attack with Scripps Health as the first thing that comes to their mind, but rather when they are recalling this brand, they're associating it with a Nobel Prize. So that's a fantastic place for Scripps Health to be. So continuing down on our dashboard here, I see that there are some trending entities and trending adjectives, right? So this will really be helpful for our content strategist, somebody who is looking to identify what we should be posting more about, right? Or even just what is being talked about with relation to my brand. So unfortunately, there's still some mentions of attack. I am, after all, looking at 6 months of data here, but hopefully, the size of that will get drowned out over time as more people are talking about the recent Nobel Prize winner. Finally are going to be some trending hashtags, right? So this is very helpful if you are looking to improve the reach of the content that you author. Hashtags also expose your content to people who follow those particular hashtags. But the key here is in getting the hashtags correct, right? Which ones are actually going to get me the exposure that I want. And so obviously cybersecurity is a very large trending hashtag for Scripps at the moment. So, maybe one way that we can actually take advantage of that is by telling the public what we are doing to improve our cybersecurity stance, right? And actually tagging it with that so that people begin associating our approach to cybersecurity and actually, start following us for that. So then we also have sentiment down here. We see that there was that red blip, right, associated with the cyber attack itself, and then also this big green blip associated with the Nobel Prize, which is fantastic. And then to wrap us up, we also have some information about who exactly is talking about us, right? So these are taken from the author biographies written about the person themselves, and we can understand who exactly is talking about the Scripps Health brand. So throughout this entire dashboard, we were able to answer a bunch of questions about who exactly is talking about Scripps, right? How often are people talking about me? How impactful is what they are saying about me? What exactly are they talking about? And then finally, who exactly is talking about myself? And so I'm going to stop sharing here. So that is really an overview of how you as a brand manager can utilize a brand dashboard in understanding what is being said about you, just like Scripps was able to utilize here. And so now we're going to be moving over onto our second use case. And so the second use case that we're going to cover is around crisis management, right? So this is a bit of a different take on where we had started, where now we're going to be talking about Stryker. You may have heard about them as a medical device company for orthopedic and neurosurgery devices. And so one of the technologies that they've been working on is for neurosurgery for stroke patients. So just a quick little medical lesson, if you will. A stroke can be caused by either a blockage of an artery or a hemorrhaging artery. So a blockage is when blood flow is stopped to your brain, and hemorrhaging is when the blood is not getting to your brain, it's going elsewhere, right? And so neither of those are great situations, obviously. But fortunately, companies like Stryker are innovating new technologies to save lives when these unfortunate events happen. And so when there's a blocked artery, there is a particular catheter that Stryker has created called the Penumbra catheter. And this Penumbra catheter can essentially go in and restore blood flow to your brain, which is great. Unfortunately, this particular catheter had to be recalled because there was danger of the tip getting dislodged while it was being used within surgery. So that is not a great situation. And so we wanted to understand how exactly Stryker was able to handle this when the Penumbra catheter was being recalled. And so I'm going to quickly switch over to this other dashboard that I have.
While you're pulling that up quick
Yeah.
to me, I'll just mention, as you were going through Scripps and the brand management piece, the part that really struck out to me is I'm thinking about our marketing team here at Reputation, and I'm
Mhm.
thinking how much the PR team would really want to be involved, and like in some of that content and some of those keywords that were trending, and in some of the and our social team on the influencer side to also help get ahead of like bounce back from that cyber attack.
Yeah.
What kind of PR announcements can you come out with? What kind of content can you, to your point, serve up that you're taking measures to change it? So that's what really stuck out to me. But I'm excited for this next one.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And so I'm going to go ahead and share. All right. So this is a dashboard that Stryker actually created to monitor the Penumbra recall, right? And so this particular incident happened around December of 2020. And so that's really when we saw the number of mentions of, I think the monitor that we configured here had the word Penumbra, catheter, recall, right? Really some of the basics here, nothing too complex. And we really see, that big circle here. So let's tap into that and just see what exactly is happening. So Global Newswire, that definitely sounds like a news outlet that would have a wide following. And so, lots of other, a long tail of other folks who had mentioned the Penumbra recall. And so I also want to take a look at who exactly had been talking about it, right? So one of the things that I noticed is that these are some of the larger agencies that you would typically think of, the FDA, some of the healthcare agencies that had worked with Stryker directly in order to manage this recall, right? And so what this tells me is that because there really is not any additional trail beyond the point of January 2021, it really tells me that Stryker did a great job of handling this crisis, right? Where sure, it was definitely not a good situation for us to be in, and the mentions of recall, Penumbra, anything related to that stopped right at a certain point, and we really have not seen any other mentions of it. So I think this is a really great example of how a dashboard can help you understand how well your crisis management efforts are going. Right. Here, we're able to find that Penumbra is really, not in the news anymore, which for a medical device, when it's being deployed, is a great thing. One of the ways that maybe Stryker can try to pivot this is to have doctors begin talking about Penumbra in a more positive light, right? Something that we heard from a Stryker marketing associate is that doctors talk. They find techniques, they find medical devices that they love using during their procedures, and they talk about it with their colleagues, right? Similarly, I know Brooke and I, we talk about marketing a lot, so very similar. But here, it's really a life or death scenario, right? And so why not have doctors share techniques or, share how much they're enjoying using a particular device if it's going to save more lives. And so to summarize, that's really how Stryker, I think, succeeded in the way that they were able to handle this crisis, where one of their devices, was recalled, but they were able to really bounce back and recover recover and not have that be too damaging to their brand. So that's great. And just to round that out, we know that Stryker is doing well because they recently acquired a new company called Gauss Surgical, and that company specializes in measuring blood flow within sponges. So when you're in surgery, it helps soak up the blood instead of having to weigh it, which is actually the technique that's used today to identify how much blood was lost. The sponge can actually measure for you how much blood it contains. So we know that Stryker has been doing great. So to pivot, we are now going to talk about our final use case, which is Tesco. And I don't know if we have any attendees today from the UK, but hopefully this is a brand that you are very familiar with. For those of us who are in the US, Tesco is a supermarket retailer that's based in the United Kingdom, and they are actually one of the top 10 globally by supermarket revenues. So, just to put that in context, I'm based here in California, so it's very similar to my Safeway. Over in the Midwest, Jewel Osco, Texas, HEB, and then over on the East Coast, where I actually grew up, there's like Stop and Shop and Key Food. So, a lot of these big name brands that are still pretty regional, but Tesco is, the equivalent to that. And so one of the areas that we looked into was how Tesco compares to their competition. And what we found is that Tesco really dominates their competition with regards to brand reach. And I want to show you how exactly that is measured and what that dashboard might look like. So
I might be a little biased here, but I think this one is my favorite one. Not that I pick favorites or anything, but as a marketer, as you go through this dashboard, you'll just see and start to think about like, why is that person across the street winning more business than me? And using a dashboard like this can really drive into maybe they have just like one huge influencer online that's talking about them a lot, and that's how they're capitalizing. Maybe you have an opportunity in staffing or in hours that you're open, and you can monitor the mentions of these other brands and see how you're doing comparatively. So from a marketing standpoint, I'm just really obsessed with this dashboard, but I will let you show it off so I can stop talking about it.
Yes, yes. And you know what? Tesco has a lot to be proud of. So I think they should be obsessed with this dashboard too. So some of the big competitors that Tesco competes with over in the UK are Morrisons and Sainsbury's. I don't personally have any experience going to these supermarket chains, but I think the data really tells us how big of a presence Tesco has in the UK. So what we're looking at here is the total number of mentions for supermarkets, retailers. I think we looked at food retailers over in the UK. And we wanted to identify which of these brands had the largest presence there. And so 65.3% over the last 24 hours. So this is fresh data that we are pulling in. It's not just a dashboard that we loaded once and kept it open. So in the last 24 hours, about 2/3 of the mentions that have included supermarkets or been about supermarkets have included Tesco within them. And that's huge, right? That really tells us that the brand recall and the brand recognition over at Tesco is working, right? Whatever their marketers are doing is working. And so, Brooke, you mentioned, why is it that Tesco is doing so well, right? And like, who exactly is talking about us, right? So that's really where we can focus on reach and spread. So the way to look at this graph is over on the left is how many people these mentions that are being written about Tesco are reaching, right? So how many eyeballs are actually seeing it? And then the spread is how many people are actually saying things, right? So this could mean that one person has written an article about Tesco and then it gets shared, X number of times. That would contribute to a small spread with a far reach, right? And so one thing that I notice here is that the reach for both Tesco and for Sainsbury's is a lot higher, whereas the spread for Tesco is also higher than Sainsbury's, right? So 5 million compared to 3 million over at Sainsbury's. So that tells me that, the customer base for Tesco is a lot larger potentially than over at Sainsbury's. Maybe they're catering to, a wider range of price points. And, the type of person that comes into Tesco is, potentially in a larger group. And so, despite that, the words that people are saying about Tesco are also reaching a much broader audience than over at Sainsbury's. So, that gives you an idea of how to structure your audience targeting when it comes to social publishing, because the type of person that you might want to be reaching over at Tesco might be harder to reach just because there is such a bigger diversity of folks out there. Next, we're going to be going down to the influencers. So I know that we talked a bit about who exactly is talking about your brand. So I think we're going to skip over the emotion stuff for right now and then head on over to the influencers. So we are able to identify which folks are talking about you that have the highest amount of reach, right? And so here, when we look at the Tesco mentions, right, the person who's talking about us most is Reuters. So, obviously they have pretty wide reach. They're a large media outlet. But then we have, a wide range of other folks. So Emily Downs, Gary Carter, Jessica Clark. And I just did some quick Googling right before this session. And these are actually news correspondents, right? So these are folks who are maybe reporting on Tesco and they, are writing articles about the Tesco brand. So, maybe those aren't the best influencers out there. But I think if I go further down in the list, right, there are probably some folks down here that, are just smaller influencers. Maybe I want to reach out to them. Maybe they can help me out with some promotion of some upcoming deals that I have coming out, right? And so that might be one approach that a content marketer will want to take. Next is on the competitive side, I want to understand what is being said about my brand that is maybe not being said about other brands, or being said that maybe I want to be associated with my brand. And so I happen to know that at Tesco, they are really pushing out the family meals and just ready to eat meals at the moment, right? And so it's great that a lot of people are talking about prepared hot meal together, right? I think they sell like buckets of fried chicken that you can buy, and just put on the table and have dinner ready. But you know what? It looks like Morrison's also had that same idea, because lots of people are now talking about this chicken counter, right? And so maybe it's just that the fall days are now coming up. It's getting a little chillier here, and so people just want some of that comfort food, and they don't want to cook. And then just taking a quick look down at Sainsbury's, it looks like in the last 24 hours, lots of folks have been talking about gift cards. The holiday season is coming up, and I wouldn't mind a gift card over to a grocery store. So Brooke, if you're looking for something to give me, that's a good idea. And so that might be an idea that Morrison's and Tesco picks up, where they really push, maybe a gift card promotion, or, the fact that you're able to load in as much money as you want on your dashboard. So this is great, because in contrast, last week when I was looking at this dashboard, one of the main phrases surrounding Sainsbury's was the supply chain shortage. So it seems like they've been able to now start controlling that narrative of talking about chicken and talking about gift cards. So it seems like all three brands have been able to move forward from that. And so that's really one of the competitive dashboards that I wanted to share with you. So hopefully you were able to see how, as a competitive intelligence marketer, right, how I would be able to understand what other brands are talking about, who is following them, who I might be able to reach out to that is already talking about those brands, so maybe they can talk about myself. And yeah. So that's the competitive dashboard. So to summarize, I know we're nearing the end here. We wanted to just summarize that today we were able to cover these three use cases around brand experience for brand marketers, crisis management, as well as competitive intelligence. But you may remember that there are a lot of other use cases that we did not have the chance to talk through. And so if you're interested in learning more about next steps on how you can pilot or try out Reputation Listen, and how Reputation Listen can help with your particular business and your industry, Brooke is going to be putting up a poll now, and make sure you select the first option there, because we would love to connect with you and help you understand how Reputation Listen can help you.
Awesome. Yeah, I just launched that poll. While you're answering, we will get into Q&A. We've had a couple of questions come throughout. I just want to highlight how we're using it internally. We had a big, if you work in marketing, you know that it's like planning for next year already. And so we had a big offsite meeting internally last week. And now I've been partnering with our content team and with our PR team so that we can really focus on staying ahead of current events. So things that are happening out in the world. So we'll make sure in our follow-up email that we send you what some of those are, like the controversy around the new host of The Bachelor. No idea if anyone else is a Bachelor fan, but
I have opinions, Brooke.
Timmy and I definitely are. And we actually, as soon as that announcement was released, we were able to scan the internet of what people were saying and the sentiment and how fans were really not happy and disappointed in who it was. You have to read for the full analysis. And we also did a trend on, do you guys remember on Monday when like internet shut down of Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp?
Yeah.
We literally turned around an article our content team did within 24 hours on the impact of especially WhatsApp being down, how many people use that app globally to communicate. So we're really using it in our PR and content space internally. So there's just a couple other ways you can use the tool. And our demand gen team has monitors up around people hiring new people. So different job titles and different people that we want to work with. And if they're hiring their executive team or bringing in new people, we're reaching out to them. So that's some of the ways that we're using it internally. And so I'll leave this poll up as we kind of get into some Q&A. So Timmy, a question came through for you. How many keywords can you add on the same dashboard?
That's a really great question. So you actually have an unlimited number of keywords. And my suggestion is that you take advantage of that, meaning you take the time to really fine tune your monitors. When it comes to monitor configuration, it's not just to set it and forget it. As a marketing professional, it really does take that TLC in order to get it to a place where it's casting a wide enough net such that you include and identify conversations that you would not have typically found, but it's narrow enough so that you can actually react to it, right? And it's not too noisy. So the example that we walked through with Scripps Health earlier, that's really a first pass, right? Meaning you take the Twitter handle, you take their domain, you just start that off. But there's a lot of fine tuning that we need to do there. There's sources that we might want to exclude, right? Or maybe there are particular languages that we might want to exclude. And so, yeah, it definitely takes some fine tuning, but the number of keywords that you can add is unlimited.
Awesome. So similar on that, how many competitors could you add into that competitive dashboard?
Yes, that's a great question. So with Tesco, we knew that they had really those two main competitors. So that's why we chose to add those two. But especially over on the retail side, or also on the auto dealership side, we know that you have, retailers or auto dealerships really to your left and right sometimes, like on the same street as you. And you just want to know how people are perceiving that entire street's worth of competitors. So you can actually add an unlimited number of competitors into the dashboard. I think my recommendation would be to choose some of the larger competitors, just because their size will be directly correlated with how often people are talking about them, right? Some of the smaller, more mom and pop shops, they might not have as much of a brand presence on the internet. So yeah, I would say focus your efforts on, the larger competitors that you really want to win against, because with a tool like this, you actually will win against them.
I love it. Can you speak? We had a question come in specifically from the automotive industry. Can you speak a little bit to social listening and how this might work with the automotive space?
Yes, absolutely. We actually have some of the largest automotive clients using our social listening tool. So this is a great question, because I truly think that all of the use cases that we talked about today are applicable in any of the industries. So let's focus on auto for a second. So when it comes to brand management, say I am a General Motors marketing executive, right? I would want to understand how General Motors is being perceived by the public. What are some of the products that my customers really love using? Which vehicles should I be stocking more on the lot? Because I don't know, people really like to give cars as gifts, it seems, over the holidays, right? And that, it can really help me inform my inventory management, my supply chain management, now that that's, such a large issue all around the world. Next is also on customer service. So a lot of times customers will write in asking about particular vehicles, or what is the difference between vehicle A and vehicle B. Those are opportunities for me to engage with those prospective GM customers and actually give them some information that they are looking for. And then finally is competitors. Obviously, if I am a GM executive, I want to do better than all of the other brands out there, right? And I want my brand to be the most recognized. And so I can put together that brand competitive dashboard to identify what is being said about me and how I'm doing relative to my competitors. So just some quick examples there to give you an idea of how this is useful in the automotive space. I could definitely spend an hour talking with you about how this can be applicable in some of the use cases. And so, yeah, that's definitely an opportunity that we welcome.
Awesome. Okay, we got a minute and a half, Timmy. So we're gonna power through
All right.
it. Maybe one more. I'm
Okay.
gonna kind of combine them into one.
Okay.
So we went through the competitive dashboard, and there's some questions in here. What are the other dashboard options that are commonly used?
Yeah, that's a great point. So one of the things that we have found is there's a template, right? That customers have found helpful when it comes to brand management dashboards or competitor dashboards. And so we've gone ahead and put together some best practice templates as a starting point. So if you are brand new to social listening, fear not, because we have really taken out the guesswork of what you should be monitoring. And so the setup here really will involve us working with you to come up with those particular keywords and the monitor logic. And then once that is in, then that's where the fine tuning comes into play. But the complicated dashboards that we were looking at, right, those will actually be put together really out of the box as soon as you're able to put together the monitor logic. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question of how those dashboards are configured.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Timmy. And thank you everyone for attending today. Like I mentioned, you will be receiving a follow-up email. We're going to include some of those articles that we've been posting lately using our own tool. We also have a brand new social listening guide that goes through some more of those use cases outside of the ones we highlighted today. And we look forward to chatting with you more about how this tool can be used within your organization. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.